security professionals are often viewed in a negative light. They're the people that always say no to everything.
For sure.
So there's kind of this antagonistic relationship between the security people and, the rest of the organization. What it comes down to as well is that you have to make a value proposition to people, and not just at the leadership level, but just employees, about why they should care about cybersecurity, what their role and responsibility and the relevance to their kind of daily lives and their job as well.
Who says tech can't be human?
What's going on, Hacker Valley fam? Welcome back to the show. I love having the podcast because I get to learn and relearn, and that's exactly what we're going to do this episode. My guest has actually been on the podcast before. My special guest this episode is Julie Haney. Julie is Human-Centered Cybersecurity Program Lead at NIST, also Hacker Valley alum. Julie, I'm excited to catch up, get to hear about what you've been working on, but most importantly, welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Rod, for having me on again.
Thanks for coming back on. So let's talk about the role and the title. I think titles are important. And your title is one I never heard of before. Human-Centered Cybersecurity Program Lead. What does that all come with?
Yeah. The program lead just means that I'm nominally responsible for all the projects, the human-centered cybersecurity projects at NIST. But I think you're probably most interested in the human-centered cybersecurity piece about what that means. We like to say that we champion the human in cybersecurity, that we are the voice of people in a field that's otherwise very technology-centric. So we really see people as being the forefront when developing and implementing cybersecurity processes and policies and technologies. Because when you think about it, cybersecurity, it was created by humans. It is for the benefit of humans in our society to protect us and our information. And it's attacked by humans. So humans should be at the center when we think about that. And when we don't have that, not so great things happen, right? People become very frustrated with security. They feel helpless rather than empowered. Solutions are unusable. So people are more prone to making errors or implementing less secure workarounds. So we really see looking at that human element as being central to good security outcomes. So what exactly does that all encompass? So part of it is usability. So I just mentioned usable solutions. So that's a part of it, but it's more broader. It's really understanding the human and social and organizational factors and how those interplay with the technical. So sometimes you hear the term socio-technical system, right? It's the system of people, process, technology, all working together. And so we want to see how all of those things impact cybersecurity from the perspective of people, from the humans. So we do look at usability, but we also look at people's perceptions and attitudes and their behaviors and the challenges they have with security and how they make their decisions in security. So it's really kind of this broad umbrella for all of the non-technical things in cybersecurity.
So important. And I say that because I'm sure if I ask my mom right now, did you know that cybersecurity was created by people? She might say, I didn't know. I just made an assumption that it probably was, but it definitely was. And I never heard of the word socio-technical. I like that. I'm going to definitely do some research on that topic.
Okay.
Looking at the term human-centered cybersecurity, I've been seeing a lot more human in titles and keywords. So one company that I partner with for some events. I just did a keynote run. It was with Living Security. And I noticed on their website, they had just updated their category to human risk management. So it seems like there's some type of evolution that's happening where we're trying our best to really reposition people in the center.
Yeah, exactly. And it's long overdue. Yeah,
It
I think
is.
I mean, we see, every year when we have these incident report kind of trends or summaries that come out, and it's always like, oh, the human element is like the big problem, right? It's always, how can we address that, even though we're spending more money on security awareness training? And is that really working? And why isn't it working? And how do we actually address the struggles that people are having?
I speak to a lot of people that I would say are kind of mid-tier in their career. They've been in the industry for about 5 years on average. And then on the other hand, I speak to a lot of people that work in the marketing industry in cybersecurity. And it seems like both of these two demographics, the people that have 5 years of experience or more, the marketers, they're sometimes hit with a little bit of a reality shock that when they join a new organization, cybersecurity adoption is not an importance. What do you think is underneath, some of that feeling like that we get in cyber, and what culture, I guess, insights have you like gained from, seeing what is the resistance or the confusion there?
We always used to kind of rail against, oh, security is just tacked on at the end, right? Like it's an afterthought. It's not thought about. And now, I think that's improved to some degree, but I think security is seen as a cost center for a lot of organizations, right? It's like, it's just something that is going to cost me more money. And we're not really sure about the return on investment because it's really difficult to measure that. So, am I not getting attacked because we implemented this new security tool? Or is it because no one's trying to attack us? So there's a lot of uncertainty about return on investment. There's a lot of just the intangible nature of security. I think there's a lot of uncertainty about, what might happen. Although I think that's become more of a reality with ransomware. People have experienced very significantly what can happen. And I think too that security professionals are often viewed in a negative light. They're the people that always say no to everything.
For sure.
And so there's kind of this antagonistic relationship between the security people and, the rest of the organization. And I think, what it comes down to as well is that you have to make a value proposition to people, and not just at the leadership level, but just employees, about why they should care about cybersecurity, what their role and responsibility is. It's not just the job of, those security and IT people sitting in, on the fourth floor or whatever, that they have a role in it, and it's important for them and the relevance to their kind of daily lives and their job as well. So I think it's a confluence of different factors that really there's a lot of negativity around cybersecurity.
Yeah, it definitely comes with a little bit of, I would say there's still that taste of Department of No. And it is because we sometimes are saying no, but I think that more often than not today, we're saying no, but, or yes, but, and kind of giving more opportunity for conversation. I just did a keynote tour, like I was mentioning, with Living Security, and I went to a financial tech company and I did a keynote there. And their team was so excited to learn from, like, hey, we don't want to learn from someone that's done offensive ops. We want to learn from someone that has helped defend it against organizations. And I thought it was very striking that everyone was so engaged and entertained. But then I took a step back. I was like, maybe it's because this was in person. We're in person. We were going through the pandemic for a while. So having just, new speakers come into your campus, it could just feel refreshing. So I thought like, oh, okay, this would be a great thing to do if I were to ever be a security practitioner again. I would do things like Cybersecurity Awareness Month, hire some great speakers, and get fresh blood to speak to my audience. What are some of those things that you find to be helpful for re-engaging the uninterested audience?
I mean, first, what you just said about having like actual live speakers there instead of the boring click, 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 my annual security awareness training, same thing every year, is, bringing in people with different perspectives that can talk about topics that the audience really cares about. Again, making that like relation to like their daily work or even their home lives. I think that's important also because we want security to be a habit no matter where you are. It doesn't just end when you leave work or when you log off at the end of the day. So I think having that personal engagement, those personal conversations is really important too, letting people have the space. And sometimes it's maybe a one-on-one type of conversation where you're just asking, maybe it's a kind of a repeat offender in the organization and you just sit down and talk with them collaboratively about, what are you struggling with? Asking people for feedback, asking like your organization for feedback. And letting them do that anonymously a lot of times, like, how are we doing? What can we do better? What information do you need that we're not giving you? That can be really valuable as well. And I think, I've seen some organizations try some pretty creative things to teach people about security. Cybersecurity escape rooms.
Yeah.
I've heard, I want to experience, but I haven't actually done an escape room of any type, but really intrigued by that. A lot of places use humor, kind of humorous types of events or things like that. Gamification. There's like debate. Sometimes it works for people, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes if you have a real competitive group of people, they kind of get into it. But I think those types of things where you're not just sending emails that are going to get deleted, or it's not just computer-based training, but you're providing the information in a lot of different formats because we all have different preferences for how we learn and how we receive information. So don't just get caught like on like one communication channel, like try different things. And different things work in different organizations. They have different kind of cultures and, sometimes humor falls flat with some groups, unfortunately, but, you got to just have an understanding of the organization and some of the preferences of the employees and how you can reach them in different ways.
If good jokes fall flat, I think that's a warning sign. That means everyone is a little too uptight, but maybe there's a reason behind it. Maybe it's a breach that you're speaking about. Humor might not be the best place for that at that moment. So what goes into doing this research? Like, it sounds like you have like a lot of experience that you've taken from working as a security practitioner, but then you're doing research on the NIST side. So what kind of things have you dug into and what have you found?
Yeah. So, I mean, it was really, I say it was a career twist. It wasn't a complete career change, but it was a twist because I, in my early 40s, decided to go back to graduate school. What was I thinking? To learn how to do research.
Was this one of those COVID
human
hobbies or was it before the pandemic?
No, I finished my degree right as COVID was hitting. So it was before that. That was my midlife crisis. This new career at NIST is my midlife crisis.
I need to jump in for a second and share some details about a special group that we've created for you, our listeners. We understand the importance of creativity in cybersecurity, and Hacker Valley has created a special Cyber Creators Mastermind. Each month, we meet and discuss how to break down technical concepts through stories, the intricacies and opportunities of using audio and video to highlight what's important in cybersecurity, and we share how you can use content to highlight the hard work that you put into your craft. You can check out the mastermind by visiting hackervalley.com/mastermind. We'd love to help unlock your creative potential and would love to see you there.
I had an interest in just from the work that I did before, and how do we help people, especially for me, having been a security professional. How do we help security professionals? Because they're users too, right? Like they're kind of overwhelmed, and security administrators do fantastic things, but like they don't know about this human-centered stuff, right? Because why would they? They weren't trained on it. They're not exposed to it. So how can we help them do their jobs better and be more satisfied and not burn out and all of that? So I really started doing research in support of security professionals. So actually, when I was on the podcast a few years ago, I talked about work I did with cybersecurity advocates. So those are professionals who are out there trying to promote security and teach people about security. And we did a few studies about security awareness programs, but from the views of the people that actually have to implement those. Did some work with developers who have to implement cryptography in their products, and that's like not a easy thing to do a lot of times when you're not you don't have the expertise in cryptography. But we've done other research also about quote unquote end users, so people that use smart home devices. Like what are their struggles with security and privacy of their smart home devices? Do they even care? What are they concerned about? Those types of things. And more recently, doing some work about cybersecurity terminology and how we just kind of fling around these words and assume everyone knows exactly what we're talking about. And it turns out, surprise, surprise, not everyone knows what you're talking about. It's all really, centered on how do we help different groups of people have better experiences in cybersecurity. So I've had an opportunity to do all kinds of interesting, like different topics within security as well. So it's never get bored, never run out of things to research.
I just got an amazing opportunity to work with one of my close friends at Mozilla, and they brought me in on a bug bounty program project. So they're building a bug bounty program. It's called Odin, and they're focused on large language models. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, this is right up my alley. I'm obsessed with AI, and I love doing research. When I started to crack open the research papers, though, on like how some academics are performing AI security research, my eyes started to get a little glassy. I started to lose my attention and focus because it was very academic. And I would imagine if they were to come into our space, our team, they're going to kind of speak in an academic way, but we work in professional settings. Do you ever find that there's a little bit of a hard time translating the research side to the practitioner side?
Absolutely. That's a struggle. And actually, the last year and a half, that's actually been one of our focus areas at NIST is trying to get some of this great research in science, because there's a lot, there's psychology, there's behavioral science, there's all kinds of things that can help us in cybersecurity. There's all kind of more recent research. How do we get that into practice? It's that kind of it's that research practice gap. It is not unique to cybersecurity. Just about all disciplines have that issue. And researchers are not always selecting topics that are of the most interest or importance to practitioners because they don't always talk with them about that. And they definitely struggle to translate because it like I was used to kind of technical writing before, but more simpler language, but directed at, I would say, system administrators.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I wrote a lot of security guidance in my prior job. And then learning how to write in a research format was very different. And so then trying to back it up again, because we want to reach practitioners, we want to share our research findings with them in a way that's accessible to them, and a format that is digestible to them. But also, how do we take kind of these sometimes high-level esoteric research findings and transform those into something actionable? So that if I'm a practitioner, I can say, oh, I know exactly what I can do in my organization. And that can be really challenging. So we've been doing some work in that area to understand some of those challenges in the connection between researchers and practitioners, and how we at NIST, given our kind of our standing in the cybersecurity community, how can we act as a facilitator for that? Because you're right, it's a whole other way of writing and communicating.
It is. It could be a real challenge. So with research, there's typically like a case study or some type of use case, an example out in the world that makes the research valuable and relevant. What stories or discoveries did you find doing this research?
We tend to do what I call applied research. So it is kind of looking at real world problems. We actually, getting back to kind of security awareness, I actually did a case study of a security awareness team for over the course of a year. So kind of followed them, interviewed their managers, interviewed employees, observed their events that they had throughout the year, looked at the documents that they had, and then you can kind of analyze that real world data in a way that maybe it's not necessarily generalizable to every organization and every security awareness team, but it shows how certain things can be done within a real context. So we usually try to kind of take whatever research that we do, the results, and try to have practical application for them, have to have some kind of actionable guidance or recommendations from that. And stories to tell, because, stories really resonate with people. And so what's the story we want to tell to practitioners with our research?
I guess, if someone were listening to this right now, they're like, you guys keep saying research, but which research? Where can I find it?
Yeah.
What's your response to that?
Yeah. So I will say in general, practitioners have a hard time finding research. So we did a survey of practitioners about kind of their views on human-centered cybersecurity, and asked them about, how, like, their perceptions of the research and the information. And they're like, yeah, we really like this. We think it's important, but we don't know where to find it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. It's like, we don't have the time to go looking for it. And then we did a survey of researchers, and we talked to them about, how are you engaging practitioners? Are you producing any outputs that are tailored towards practitioners and not a conference or a journal, an academic conference or journal? And we asked them, well, how are you communicating to practitioners? And we asked practitioners, how do you want to receive information? And there was such a disconnect in the channels that they were using. So they're not, they both want to learn from each other, but they're just not making those connections. So, at NIST, we're very fortunate again, because we kind of have an audience already created for us, right? We have mailing lists, we have kind of the NIST name, and we have a website where we dump all of our stuff. So we do have research papers, but we've got blogs and there'll be a link to this podcast on there eventually, and short videos and blogs and things in all kind of different formats. But most researchers don't have that. So we've been doing a lot of thinking recently about how we can bring people together. So we, a couple of months ago, we started an online community of interest. It's called the Human-Centered Cybersecurity Community of Interest. I'll send you the link after if you want to include it.
We will be in the description
for your audience. And we have almost 400 people who have joined. So it's really supposed to be a place for researchers, practitioners, other people just interested in human-centered cybersecurity to come together, share information, have discussions, make those type of connections, for researchers to be able to say, hey, I'm thinking about this topic, or, I'm looking for people to participate or provide input. And we've had that happen a few times already, practitioners saying, yeah, I'm interested. So, that's just a beginning. I mean, we're thinking of other ways. How can we have these meaningful conversations so that these two communities can really inform each other? Because they each have a lot of good things to share that could be helpful to the other community. They just don't know. They're just not connecting right now. So how can we help?
Right. Interesting. So it sounds like if someone was interested in kind of putting the human, they realize that people at the organization are their strongest point of security, then they might join the community of interest as a starting point.
Yeah, they certainly could. And we have, and also on our website, we have some information kind of geared toward the security community about some misconceptions people might have about the human element and some kind of practical suggestions. So I'll send you the link for that as well. We call it "Users Are Not Stupid." 6 cybersecurity pitfalls overturned. There's a short, like a handout, and there's a longer article, and I've given a talk on that a few times. But it's just, a lot of it is honestly that awareness that, hey, maybe I need to think about when I'm first thinking about a new process or a policy, or introducing a new technology in an organization. Let me stop and think about who's going to be using this, what's their skill level, what are their kind of needs, how disruptive is this going to be to their primary duties that they have, right? Their kind of primary task is, most people, they don't sit down at a computer to do security. They have another job to do. What are the other stakeholders who might be impacted, and involve people from the very beginning to get their feedback. And so a lot of it is just thinking like, oh, maybe before I decide to put this out to the entire workforce, I should try it with a handful of people and see how it goes, and then see where they might be confused, or they might be making errors, or get their input. So it's even sometimes as just simple as just changing your mindset a little bit, and seeing people not as a problem to be solved, but as a partner in security. So that how can they help contribute to the solution?
NIST always will have a soft spot in my heart. One, because it's been around ever since I got into cybersecurity. But two, I'm from Maryland, and NIST headquarters is in Maryland, so I always support Maryland organizations. What keeps you full of life, engaged at NIST? Like what makes you very proud to work there?
Yeah, I do. I do love that. I find more so first, it was interesting because I used to work first as a guest researcher. That I was looking into kind of this usable security thing, and NIST had a usable security team, and I was supposed to come and work on a project for 6 months, and I extended twice, and it turned into 18 months. And then I had to go back, and then I asked them to hire me because I loved it so much. And I think, number one, for me, it's the people. My group it's an incredibly supportive, collegial group of kind people, which I think is really important. And they're super smart. They're from all different types of kind of academic disciplines. So they all have these unique perspectives, and, really wanting to help people. So my group it does more than just cybersecurity. That's just a piece of what we do. But in general, we look at kind of human-centered technology, IT, and IT. So that was the first thing. The second thing is the work is just super fascinating. We have an opportunity to make positive impact, and that has always been what has motivated me, is that I want to leave some good in the world and help people in some way. And the organization is very much, the broader organization is very much focused on that. And it's like making a positive impact. Every special publication that NIST puts out has been through a consensus process. It's not just, people sitting in a room deciding that this is what we should write. They are engaging stakeholders. They're getting their input. They're listening to them about what's feasible in the real world. Considering people's the constraints that they have, their interests, the problems that they're having. How can we help them solve those problems? So I really love that model. Not necessarily saying, oh, we're the best and we know it all, but saying we want to build a team of people that are the best and know it all, and we're willing to listen to others because we don't necessarily, know it all. So yeah, it's the people, it's the atmosphere, it's the work, it's the whole package. Yeah.
Good. I'm glad to hear that you went back to school. You applied the knowledge and education. There's no buyer's remorse, because I mean that's a big commitment to say, all right, I got 20 years in the game. I'm going to go back to school and I'm going to reemerge in cybersecurity in kind of like a completely different vantage point.
It's almost like you have to reconquer the imposter syndrome that maybe you had when you started off in cybersecurity, and you're starting in a different field and you're trying to find your place in a different field. But the good thing is when you do that, when you're like later in life, is that you have a lot more self-confidence in yourself and your abilities. So it makes it easier.
So let's play a little bit of a role play, right? You were in cyber some time ago and still are, but you were a practitioner, and now you focus on helping the practitioners and organizations as a whole. What advice would you give yourself as you were on your way out of being a cybersecurity practitioner to put the person, back into perspective for the security program?
I think I would say, first of all, Julie, you're on to something, because I learned some of these things the hard way over time about usability and your users, and not trying to force too much security on people. And there's a lot of reasons why organizations aren't always adopting these, kind of security quote unquote best practices. And it's not always because they're ignorant of them, or they're lazy, or there's other reasons. And so I think I would tell myself, focus on the people. You don't have to be super down in the weeds technical, to contribute to cybersecurity. I would tell myself that, like my younger self, that, you have a lot of other strengths that you can contribute. And part of that is observation of people, and, the empathy and the curiosity to understand why people do what they do. So I think I would just say, be easier on yourself, focus on the people. That's the important part. And let everything fall into place.
That's beautiful. I think that everybody needs to have that chat with themselves, especially, hearing, Julie, you're onto something. I'm sure that's probably ringing in the back of your mind as you're going through tough ideas or new areas of research with your current role. And I would encourage anyone that's a listener to, put that at the top of their mind. You're on to something. If you're in this industry, you're in this field, you have employment, you're doing something right. And all you got to do is continue the path. Julie, I had one more question for you. For the people out there that know about NIST, they haven't necessarily checked out the research, the blogs. What's the best way for them to, start to look around and see what's right for them? What part of the website would you recommend them to go to?
We have the website organized by different topic areas. So there's one that's just kind of human-centered cybersecurity general. So I would say go there first, because you're going to get a lot of these type of overviews about what is human-centered cybersecurity, what's usable security, why it's important, Here's some tips. So I would say start there first, just to kind of immerse yourself a little bit in what we're talking about. And then, go to other topic areas that you have the most interest in. And we have quite a few up there. So I think that would be my advice. And no one's ever asked me that, but that's great, because when you're navigating like a big website with all these pages, and where do you start? So good question.
Absolutely. And just to make everyone's life easy, we're going to also drop some links into the show notes or description wherever you're listening or watching, so you could check and learn more out about NIST. I think it's a great resource. In fact, one of the frameworks that I always reference is NIST Cybersecurity Framework. I think that's an absolute must to review, especially if you're joining a new organization, and just re-immerse yourself into those foundational pieces of wisdom. Julie, I wanted to thank you from the bottom of our heart for taking some time out of your busy day to jump on the mics again. For anyone that hasn't already connected with Julie, again, go to the show notes or description. You can find her LinkedIn and also her work at NIST. And with that, we will see everyone next time.